Hello everyone and welcome back to the Educated Colin Snap channel. How you doing? So today we're going to be talking about 15 plus, it's actually more than 15 decks for you to play post patch. Definitely got some feedback in the last one where some people wanted a guide structure, and it is true, I haven't done one of these in a while, so definitely wanted to kind of drop a ton of decks for you to try in the patch. I do think that the meta isn't too different from post patch. The main thing is the enchantress buff, so you do have to be a little bit more aware of fighting or getting hit by a random enchantress, so you just have to be more careful. But in terms of meta deck lists, I don't think things have really shifted too much. So I just wanted to showcase some of the decks that can play it, and then some of the older decks that are still relatively fine, but you just have to, be more aware of the things that you can encounter. So let's get started. The first things first, we have Sera Control. I think Sera Control is the big winner of this patch, just because it already used Enchantress very well, and it was also already a really good deck even before the buff. So it just kind of supplements that this is going to be a deck that you can play this meta that is going to be consistent, going to be strong. The first one I have here is the yesterday's video, just kind of a showcase. I did get a lot of comments about what to replace, right? Obviously, Jeff is expensive, and Darkhawk and Zabu are not cards that you might have. So I did want to have a secondary list. In the yesterday's video, I do write in the comments some replacements for Polaris and some of the other common counters. But if you just want a more standard Sera deck list that you can probably run, this one I do like. Destroyer effects are pretty common right now, so armor actually has a pretty good chance of messing people's game plans, and then you just have the other tools that just work well. You can also do a hit monkey variant. I might have a hit monkey list following up. I definitely have a hit monkey list. I don't know if it's exactly a hit monkey Sera list coming up, but it's definitely something you can also try if you want to put hit monkey in a Sera control list as well. Next up, I have Death Wave, Doom Wave. So this is the kind of the culmination of playing some type of Death Wave, Doom Wave deck. You do have the Death Engine, plus you have Doom in a Death Engine. I think it works really well. I think this is just something that people should have been doing anyways. And then like the maybe unique tech is the Enchantress here. It's a really strong card right now, and kind of just fits the Shang-Chi Enchantress. Pick which one you need for the end game, and use that to your advantage. I also want to say that if you don't want to play Enchantress, Arrow is the normal slot in that particular spot. So if you just want to play with Arrow still, that still works perfectly fine. This is just something you can try if you want to mix it up, have a little bit of a surprise. I think it works well in this type of deck. You're not really punished by enchanting any one of your cards. Next up, I have Patriot. I still think Patriot is strong. Definitely a good list for you to try. The new meta with Patriot is to run Super Scroll. This was really evident in the mirrors, where the one with the Super Scroll pretty much always wins. So it's like a new tech. I'm surprised I didn't make a video about Patriot while it was like arguably the most dominant answer to Electro Ramp, when Electro Ramp was very prevalent. But this is definitely a viable list. Patriot's still fine. Just because Enchantress gets buffed doesn't mean you're going to see it every game. Doesn't mean you're going to have to deal with it. And usually when you're playing Patriot anyways, you're kind of not stacking the buffs together to get one shot by it. But you still have the Cosmo as an alternative option to kind of deal with the increase in Enchantress that you are going to see, because you are going to see more Enchantress. So you do want to be aware of that. You have the Cosmo. Cosmo still just shuts down any type of tricks that your opponent wants to do. And then because you're running Cosmo, it's kind of hard to stack with any of those on reveal effects like Squirrel Girl and Dr. Doom. Sometimes that's what you want to be playing. So instead we have the Onslaught here. So if you go Patriot, Cosmo, Blue Marvel, Onslaught, that still works perfectly well as long as you are kind of filling the other lanes with random cards. So definitely think this is a good variation of Patriot. Obviously, Patriot has a lot of variations, so you could switch things up. to your specifications, but I just want to mention, hey, this works still pretty good. There's a lot of decks really that we're going to go over that essentially just still work. And I think Electro Wrap also is one of those that still work. Yes, Sandman got hit by 2, but the decks that Sandman beats, like Sandman still beats. It doesn't matter that it lost 2 power. If you go Electro, Sandman, Dr. Doom, Odin, you're still going to win. Like 2 power on one lane is not going to change things. So even though it is a nerf, right, the deck is weaker overall, it's really not enough of a nerf to say, oh, I'm not going to win the matchups that I already won. You're going to win the matchups you already won. And maybe the matchups where the Sandman wasn't doing that much for you, where people are already playing 1 card per turn, yeah, you're going to have a tougher time. But you're really playing this deck because a lot of people are playing Sera decks right now. A lot of people are playing Hitmonkey decks right now. A lot of people are playing just late game Flood decks with Bishop and Basque right now. So if Sandman shuts down those decks, like, it doesn't matter that you've lost 2 power. You're still going to roll them over. They're still going to leave because they can't do anything against you. The hope, right, from Second Dinner is that you play Sandman and they play Enchantress or something like that, right? And that might start happening, but I really don't think the decks that utilize flooding really are playing Enchantress, right? The flooding decks are not going, oh, I'm gonna do Enchantress then flood. Like their whole game plan is setting up for a powerful turn 6. So I just think this deck still works, and you're not really losing that much power. And in the decks that you will beat, you'll still beat them pretty consistently. Next up, we have Darkhawk Dino. Definitely have Darkhawk. I think is just a staple card in the metagame. Definitely get asked a lot if they should buy Darkhawk. I need to make a token unlock in a series 4-5 for this season or the season coming up. But I don't think you want to buy Darkhawk because it's getting free next month. Zabu is a different question. That one you could definitely argue to buy it because it's going to be 2 months essentially before you get it. That might be worth, especially if you already have Darkhawk. But instead of Darkhawk, I wouldn't buy it now. I would just wait for 3-4 weeks to get it for free. So if you do have them, I do think Darkhawk Dino is a pretty consistent list. The first one we have, once again, uses Enchantress. It's kind of in that Shang-Chi White Queen space, but I think it makes sense in there. You can definitely control the placement of Enchantress not to mess with your Devil Dinosaur or your Darkhawk. You do have to be a little bit careful, but obviously it should be able to surprise people because it's kind of a hard card to pilot in a deck like this. So because it's hard to pilot, a lot of people won't expect you to play it, and it definitely works if you are being careful. Next up is a more standard, I would say, Darkhawk control list where it doesn't really care about the changes to Enchantress. So you're just doing your own normal game plan with the Devil Dinosaur Darkhawk combo, and you do have the Dr. Doom for your insurance in the late game. So definitely, I still think this deck works. Don't think it's going to suffer too much with the Enchantress change. You could feel a little bit of a punish. Obviously, you do have to be careful, like, oh yeah, they might have the counter. But overall, I still think in a lot of decks, this still just kind of rolls over and is a very consistent tool. So kind of like it. Next up, we have the Galactus variant. So I do have 2 Galactus decks for you. The first one is Nimrod. Galactus, this one's definitely the more expensive of the bunch. You have Kang. I do think Kang is easily replaceable. You could either run Daredevil or you could run Yondu. Those are the 2 I would say really just slot in. But this is definitely a more Nimrod centric where you have the 2 win conditions of Nimrod or Destroyer to be how you end the game. So it's definitely still good if you like Galactus. I'm not the biggest Galactus fan, and especially with all the commentary for people not liking how it plays or whatever, right? It's up to you whether you want to play it or not, but it still works. It should still be fine. It didn't really get affected by any of the changes at all. Next up, you have the more toxic Galactus here, where it's just Wave Galactus. Okay, did that go off? All right, I shut you down with the Spider-Man Octopus, and you can't do anything. Right? Definitely, this one still works. It's essentially Galactus, and this is like the essence of it. So you could definitely play it if you want to. Next up, we have discard. I don't know why, but discard always feels like it gets like ignored every season for some reason. But I think it's a good deck. It's strong. It works. It surprises people how much power you can put in. The swarms are flexible. I guess maybe the reason people don't necessarily love playing discard is that the power is very predictable, where you play the Mordark, you can predict the Morbius power, you can predict the Swarm power, you can predict the Apocalypse power. It's kind of easy to predict exactly how much power you're going to have, so that maybe at the highest levels people always leave because they know they've lost or something. But generally, if you're just playing it casually, like you can definitely just get wins, and it has so much power, so much pressure, and this is still a really good deck, so just something you can try to play out. Next up, we have Shuri. So Shuri got nerfed, of course, you're right. But I'm so surprised that it just dropped off the face of the earth. Like, no one's playing Shuri anymore. It's all gone. They're doing other things. And I'm just like, it didn't get nerfed like that badly that it's doomed. But it does seem like people just they want to try something new or whatever. And it's definitely worse. So maybe the feeling of, oh my god, it used to be OP, to now, oh my god, it's like slightly balanced and there's counterplay and people can beat me now. And maybe that's the feeling people don't like, and they're just like going to try a different deck now. But I still think Shuri is fine. If you play it right, you have the setup, it still puts out a ton of power. She-Hulk into Taskmaster turn 6 is still nuts. 24 into 24 is still nuts. And you can't really utilize the Cosmo right into the Shuri lane, but you still have the armor to set up, and you have a lot of like good powerful plays. The one at the top is a little bit more experimental. I believe they're using stature to kind of be the Shuri target if you have it right, because the stature can be 1 power, so you use Shuri into Black both, and then you can go 1 drop and 5 drop. They have the Rocket Raccoon just for insurance, and you have the Psylocke to kind of get an early 5, so you can go like Psylocke on 3 into Marvel, into Vision, that kind of thing, if you don't draw the Shuri. So it's kind of like the secondary like Shuri essence of the deck. So definitely a cool list. I think has a lot of play patterns there. I would say probably a little bit better than the standard Shuri list, but that one is definitely more expensive. And then the here one is just a standard list, like, you know, you do the same thing every time and you hope it works. So definitely something to try. If you don't like Shuri, if you think it doesn't feel as good as before, that's because it's not, but it's still solid. And if you want to see how it feels now, you can still see and see if it works for you. Next up, once again, Thanos Lockjaw. So we're going back to the old meta, Shuri, Thanos Lockjaw. I still think Thanos has a lot of play patterns. I have a video of control Thanos, junk Thanos, essentially. That one a lot of people seem to resonate with, and I definitely see it still doing a lot of damage in the charts in the meta tier list. But just wanted to talk about Lockjaw is still fine. Obviously, it's a little bit slower. You can't fully spam a lane, but because you're playing Thanos, it's a lot easier to just have small things to put into Lockjaw and hope you get big things out of it. So definitely, as long as you have that setup, still works. Everything is pretty much the same. The leeches obviously works because you can't leech into the lane. You kind of have to leech in a different lane or have it come out of the Lockjaw. So that one is a little bit worse, but Leech is still a toxic card. Obviously, people hate it for a reason. It shuts down your whole win con if it goes off. So, yeah, you're paying a premium in terms of power, but if it goes off, you just destroy their whole game plan, and that can really end the game for them. So it's still a good card, just not as popular because it has some downsides now. So definitely something you can try if you have Thanos. There's so many Thanos decks you can play, honestly. And this is definitely something I just want to remind people, hey, try it, see if it still feels good for you. It still has good win rates and stuff like that. Thanos it surprises me, like, the amount of win rate it has, and then people still are like, is Thanos good? Like, I'm just like, this thing, it has like the best win rate all the time, but people just don't know or don't really want to, like, hey, Thanos is still good. They want to play something else, and that's fine. I just wanted to mention, like, you can still do Thanos Lockjaw, Thanos Control, Thanos Zoo, Thanos Ongoing, Thanos, like, whatever. It's just such a flexible card. Next up is a unique list. This one is something I found on Reddit that I was pretty happy with when I was looking through. I was like, there's a lot of options here. The issue is it has Jeff and Sentry, which is pretty much gonna shut a lot of people from playing this deck because they won't have Jeff or they won't have Sentry. Right? I don't have Sentry even myself. Right? But I just think this deck is really strong, has a lot of flexible ways of piloting. There's just a lot of synergy with almost all the cards they're playing. The Zero has synergy, Armor has synergy, Jeff with Professor X is so good. Professor X Destroyer is very strong. With the Sentry, Destroyer is also really good, especially with the Professor X. It's just like there's so much synergies in this deck that it just looks really fun to play. It also looks really good. So definitely a big fan of this list. You definitely have to see how it works and what you want to do. I do want to mention that if your opponent knows this list, that's another thing. I don't think a lot of your opponents are going to know what you're doing. But if your opponent does know what you're doing, there are ways to counteract it. But especially niche decks like this, you can really surprise people with all the little combos you can do. People are not going to expect that Sentry Viper play. People are not going to expect that, a Tomb of Professor X play. People are not going to expect that Storm into Sentry, lockdown there. So there's so much you can do here that I really like how this deck really functions. Next up, we have Toxic Sera. So once again, this is a Sera deck with Enchantress. But yeah, this is the Hit Monkey one. Instead of going for the Darkhawk or the regular version, here you have Hit Monkey, but you also have the Luke Cage Hazmat combo just to run. I'm always a big fan of Hazmat. I think it's a really fun card to play with. So anytime I can put it in a deck, I always try. And you have the Bass for the synergies, right? Bass hits so many good cards that you can really do a lot of work with. So definitely a big fan of this type of build when it works out. And I think it's something you could definitely try. And then following up, we have Silver Surfer deck. So this is a Sera Silver Surfer deck. I'm kind of impressed by Surfer at the moment. I didn't realize it was that solid, right? You always felt like, oh, after the nerf, like it wasn't good anymore because you lost a ton of power. But really, I've been playing against Surfer decks a lot, like a reasonable amount, and I'm always surprised, like, oh, this actually had a good chance of winning, or this beat me, or whatever it is, right? So, and I've played some myself as well. I would say, I think the one at the top was a list I was jamming. Actually, I had a Jeff instead of Scorpion, but a lot of people don't have Jeff, and I don't think Jeff really made a difference. I just like the card, and I put it into almost any 2 slot these days because it just feels really good. So, but generally you don't need it, and definitely think the Surfer lists there can definitely do a lot of work. The Rogue is a nice tech for the ongoing. You can run Enchantress, but I definitely think it just makes more sense to play Rogue in a Surfer deck. If you can't play Rogue and Surfer, what are you doing? And then the bottom one is just a little bit more stock standard list. You have the Juggernaut, and then you have the Polaris in there as well, just to kind of have a little bit more control in the lanes. You can do Storm Juggernaut to win a lane, and then you can just like focus on winning one of the other lanes, maybe the lane you put Goose in or something like that. So definitely has a nice flow of the game, and when it works, it's still pretty strong. So pretty happy with it. And then last, we have a Classic Storm. So this one is just a deck for the maybe newer players, right? There's not a lot of expensive cards here. I don't think there's any expensive cards here, but I just think if you need a deck, you don't know what to play, I think this deck works pretty well. You've got the Storm into Jones, and then you have the Vision Lockdown. You have the Jubilee High Roll. Maybe you hit the Chavez, maybe you hit the Infinite. I mean, you're likely not hitting the Chavez, to be fair, right? But you do have that consistency of just having your cards when you want them. And I definitely think Armor is a little bit underappreciated still. There's a lot of destroy effects, and Armor just really shuts that down. So you can really do a lot. And it's just a deck for people that don't have a lot of Series 3 cards and can pretty much always play. There's always people asking, hey, I don't have anything. Hey, Collis, I don't have anything. What to play? So I wanted to kind of give them a deck list that, I think this could work out for you if you pilot it correctly. So definitely hope this helps a lot of people that are looking for something to play. I know it's hard sometimes figuring out, oh, there's a new meta, what should I do? Hopefully there's something in here that resonates with you, or try them all out. Honestly, there's no, you don't have to pick a deck and like play 50 games before you try it. You're right. You could just play 10 games of anything that looks interesting and then see which one works out the best for you. So hopefully you guys enjoy this one. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care and have a wonderful rest of your day. Educated Colin snapped in it. I'm sorry.